What's up YouTube, Kronos here, and welcome back to the PSO2 guide video. So I did the couple of quick guides that I put up on the channel. I think there's a total of like either 4 or 5 of them. Pretty sure it's like 4-ish. But in those quick guides, one of the things I did was kind of go over things to look out from to look away from whenever you're building skill trees. And from the comments I realized that a lot of people actually had questions specifically about how they should look into building skill trees, what skill trees should they use, like do people have guides on like what build you should go for. And it really got me thinking of something that helped me out a lot when it came to skill trees, and it was just generally what to think about as you're building a skill tree. Like when you really understand the skill trees, you kind of get a good idea of like what you really should be looking at, kind of what to grab in order. And a big thing is going to be when the NA servers come out, people are going to be leveling up. And as you're leveling up, you kind of want to have certain things to make life a little bit easier for you. So we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over building a skill tree essentially. I'm going to be doing Bouncer Hunter, Dual Blade Bouncer specifically because it's something that I'm relatively used to. I'm actually going to grab something here really quick. So I'll be linking this in the video description. But there are some guides on skill builds on the PSO2 Fleet Discord that were included in my last video, that I'm also going to have open for a couple of things. Now granted, I always recommend taking a look at a guide for general information. However, the way you should build your character is up to you really. If you don't use everything that guide has, then there's no point in really going with it. 1 second here while I get this opened up. There we go. Let me double check this is really what I want. Yeah, that matches up with everything I would normally get. There's a couple of things I would change here personally, but yeah, not too bad. So yeah, that should be fine. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. Now I've tried recording this a few times actually. I pretty much just gave up one day on recording it just because I kept getting interrupted. But one thing that you will learn is resetting your skill trees isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world. We get skill tree resets whenever SEGA makes changes to the classes, and they give them one of each character. So something very commonly done is making multiple characters even if you don't use them, and just leave them aside. I think it's 3 free characters you'll get, 1 of your main and 2 alts. I would recommend making those 3 characters flat out, even if you don't use them, even if you have to delete them and remake them, whatever. Just make 3 characters. That way, whenever things happen where you get something per character, you'll get one in each of your characters. Oh, it might help if I actually make sure I have a skill tree reset on me before I try to do this. Let's go ahead and grab one really quick. Which I should have. Yeah, I've got 9 left, so that's fine. Once you get used to your skill trees, you'll find you don't reset your skill trees very often. But we're going to reset everything. And then I'll have to redo my atoll tree, but we're going to jump into something a bit simpler. One of the base classes, Bouncer. So we're going to go through Bouncer main class and Bouncer subclass. Now when I originally recorded this, I kind of went into specifics of Bouncer itself. I'm going to avoid that and just kind of talk about what to look for when you're building your class itself, because it changes for everyone a little bit. There's basic things that you want to do that pretty much the same across the board, but we're not going to get too specifics into Bouncer. If you are a Bouncer main that wants to specifically play dual blades, you happen to luck out because I'm pretty much going to go through my exact tree that I use for dual blade only. And you'll be able to kind of grab that tree, but it's mostly the same tree that the PSO2 fleet uses. And they have a dual blade specific one, dual blade jet boots, all that stuff. So definitely good to check that out. And like I said, it'll be in the video description. So as you can see, we have our skill tree here itself. We start out with 104 skill points. Now granted, I am level 90 Bouncer in Hunter because I switched to Atoll as a main. When the Atoll came out, the level cap was 90, not 95. It is currently 95, so that's why my Atoll has more skill points, because it is at 95, and Bouncer's at 90. So we got 104 skill points. That's how much you'll have at 90 if you've got everything unlocked. One thing to kind of mention here is across the top of the skill tree, you'll find these skills here. These all are skills that originally used to be rings, but were added into the game as skills. These skills don't cost any skill points. As you see, my skill points are not going down. All you have to do is level up to get these. So grab them as you level up. Very, very important. Very good to use. If you hit 85 and leveling up, this skill works exactly the same way. It doesn't use a skill point. So these are just level unlocks. Pretty simple. So first thing you're looking for in a skill tree when you're going through it is percentage-based damage bonuses. So what you'll find a lot of times is people will usually recommend certain skill trees and say that, well, yeah, you want to take this as a subclass because you're going to get more damage out of it because of its multipliers. Fairly common terminology uses multipliers. So I did mention in my original video that you want to stay away from skills like base stat upgrade skills like dexterity up, attack up, and things like that, which is mostly true. We're going to take 3 points in dexterity up because it's required for all the skills we want to get to. So if you look at all these skills that are locked currently, this requires 1 point in the prerequisite skill, this requires 3 points. It's no more than 3 points on any of these skills. And notice how they're all linked to dex up. So we can't really get around that. We're going to take 3 points in dex up, unlocks all the skills we want to get to. I mentioned multipliers are one of the first things you go for, but actually before that, one very important thing to grab, and don't forget it. On the NA servers, it's called Focus. On JP servers, it's called Gear. But you want to grab your class's mechanic, essentially is what it is. So we're going to grab Dual Blades Gear as our first skill point, after taking, of course, 3 points of dex up. This just means that you'll be able to use one of your class's main mechanics. For Jet Boots, it's right here. For Dual Blades, it's here. Jet Boots has got a little bit more going on with theirs, but again, you can get into the specifics of that on like an actual Jet Boots video. So we've grabbed gear. It's important. Next, we want to get multipliers. Now, there's an argument made for not just grabbing multipliers, but actually grabbing certain mechanics of your class. Bouncer specifically has a skill called Photon Blade Fever, and they have another skill called Rapid Boost. The class very much synergizes around going back and forth between these two skills using both weapons. What I recommend for a lot of people is if you are going to want to grab this, it's really great for boss shredding. Just grab a point. Notice that as you put more points in, the only thing that changes is how long it lasts. So grabbing 1 point, pretty valuable, just at least the way you have it, you know? But anyway, you want to jump into your actual multipliers. Now, classes beforehand had stances where you had to activate them. Now classes have a base stance and an actual activatable stance. The base stance, if you notice, has no sort of looking for cooldown, where the activatable stance does. Just means it's once you activate it, you can't turn it off for 5 seconds. So basically the way this ends up working out, when you take points here, you always have this stance activated, this multiplier, essentially. When you turn this on, it turns this off. When you turn this back off, this gets turned back on. So this is your base, this is your activatable. In the set of dual blades, in this situation, this is only one that's a little unique. Because of the way that Dual Blades Bouncer plays, we're going to actually grab Break Stance first, before grabbing Elemental Stance. In most cases, for most classes, you want to grab your base stance first. But in this case, just for Dual Blades, essentially, we're going to grab this first. So I'm going to max out 10 points here. Again, Dual Blade Bouncer specific, but we're going to take this here. Notice this is 35 power, the 35% damage bonus. If it's not a breakable part, it's regular damage. So this is it's 135%, basically means it's plus 35%. This is plus 0. We're taking this so it activates on non-breakable parts as well 90% of the time. So bam, we got that. Next, we'll get an extra 10% damage bonus. And that's it for our first multiplier. That's all we're going to touch. From there, we're actually going to double back and grab our other multiplier. Again, this is specific just to Bouncer because of how important these stances are. We're going to take this as well in situations where we can actually match our elemental bonus. So, cool, we have our multipliers, kind of the base minimums. We're not going to worry too much about critical just yet. So the way critical works in PSO2, which is a bit different than other games, is your chance to crit, or I'm sorry, when you actually crit, you don't increase your damage. The way damage works is you actually have a damage range. Whenever you crit, you hit your highest point of that damage range. So you don't do any more damage than you can do. So theoretically, technically, you can do a regular attack, hit your max damage cap, and then also crit and hit your max damage cap. That is possible. Relatively unlikely, but possible. So fairly early on, when we had very limited skill points, I mean like a level 75, you really didn't invest much in crit because you really didn't have the skill points for it. Plus just getting raw damage buffs worked out better and more damage for you. Now in the current meta, the way the game works out, you end up investing in crit later on. So you will come back to these and you probably will look at them on your other skill trees as well. I mean, Hunter also has access to them. We're going to go over Hunter as a subclass because, I mean, every class freaking uses it, and any of the melee classes use it mostly the same way. I say mostly, not exactly, but mostly. Anyway, so we jump into those. Next, we want to look into getting mechanics of our class. So again, for Dual Blade Bouncer specifically, because you're early in levels, I'm a fan of grabbing these early. Just for boss shredding, this is just escape. So this is a bit of defensive, more offense, more offense. This is just lasts longer. This causes to do more damage, a bit of defensive stat. Not stat, but a bit of a defensive option with dodging. So we've gotten our main extra source of damage, our multipliers, base, and we have our gear or focus, right? We've got most of what we really need. Now I'm going to touch on this really quick because I'm not sure how far in leveling you would really be at this point, but high level damage bonus. Around level 75, I usually recommend people save your skill points to when you hit 80 because this is just a flat 5% damage bonus across the board. Relatively useful, so go ahead and save your skill points at 75, going up to 80. There's some specific client orders you get that are going to give you more skill points, but unless you just have the 5 skill points going and you're just like leveling up and smashing through your levels, I would say save them for this because it's definitely worth it. Now we look into class mechanic specifics. So in this case, for Bouncer, we look at things like fields. I'm not going to go into really heavy detail on what these are, but these support your team, these support yourself. These are mandatory. These have a mechanic that's later on that you're going to grab it regardless. This is where I mentioned that you go back into crit again. Gonna kind of happen. So we're going to grab these because these support you. You want to support yourself before you're supporting someone else. We'll come back up to these, but this is where you kind of have to make a decision on what's more important to you. Grabbing these stance crits, this crit chance, it really just depends on if you can actually utilize your crit chance itself. I personally prefer to grab the fields first, then grab the actual remain. This supports the field skill itself, so these activate for 60 seconds. Their cooldown timer starts right when they activate, then they're down for 30 seconds, and then they add them up again. Field remain means it's 30 seconds that they're down, you still have their bonus. So you're helping everyone for 60 seconds, you're still getting the bonus for 30 seconds, then you reactivate them again, and you're helping everyone again. These fields actually affect other players when you walk into it, so it's really nice. Or when they're in the field itself, so it's very nice for like down moments and stuff like that. So I personally prefer to take these fields first, mainly because the class mechanic has something along with that called dodge auto field. Basically, if you dodge an attack, your fields automatically reapply again. So very useful there. And again, I'm explaining why I take these things in this specific situation because you want to look at it from your class's perspective, how things are going to work together and how they're going to be useful, right? So if I was looking at it from pure skill points, like, okay, cool, I want to make sure I have enough skill points, right? So I'll grab a point here first and then grab a point here next, and then like get these going up, and then maybe grab this point afterwards, or maybe grab a point in each of these first and then grab field remain, then max these out. You know, it's kind of up to you how you want to do it, what you feel like is more important to you, but the point is you're going to get all of these across the board regardless, right? So we're supporting ourselves, we're supporting our group. This really isn't that important because the healing you get from this isn't that great, and if you really want to help people by healing them, there's another skill that you'll use. It's a tech, so it's relatively easy to cast, even as a bouncer. I use it for myself and for other people too when I played bouncer, so it's fairly useful. It's called Megaverse, in case you're wondering. But anyway, moving forward, we've gotten all these skills right, so we've got mostly everything that we need for the most part, but we have a good chunk of skill points left. So what do we want to look at next? So one thing I do personally is I take a look at step advance. Because we have a mechanic that that works with our dodge, giving us a little bit more time iframe on dodge is kind of nice. So I usually grab 2 points here. Makes it a little bit easier to manage. And from there, we want to look at what else is going to increase our damage. So one thing I usually grab a point here. Now, I don't grab this early. This is actually one of the last points I get, but the reason I'm going to explain it now is essentially it's just goes along with the skills up here. You've got a skill called air reversal. Basically, whenever you get knocked back, you press your jump button immediately when you're getting knocked back, and you recover. It's an air reversal. What happens here is that your air reversal makes it so whenever you do air reversal, you get a little bit of photon points back. Kind of nice for getting the two of those together. So like say you get knocked back, you take a big hit, you need some photon points to be able to cast a tech to heal up or get out of dodge. It just works out fairly well. So you end up having this point left over anyway if you're going full points into 90. So I take this point here. But it's not that important, really, when you're looking at it. So now we've got 25 skill points left. What else are we going to do with our 25 skill points? Well, now we can come back down to these auto fields, or these elemental stances. The elemental crit and break stance, critical. We got the 5 points. We drop 5 points, right? Now, granted crit chance, it's just something that increases our chance to max our damage the possibility, which technically across DPS is still a DPS increase, so still useful, right? We're gonna grab those. Now we have 15 points left. So this is where things get a bit weird. I mentioned that you really don't want to look at flat attack bonuses because they're really not that strong. However, if you're not getting damage from any other source on your tree, so say you're not touching jet boots, you're not doing any of that stuff, really the only thing that's left is flat attack damage bonuses. You look here, 10 points, only get you 50 S attack. That's pretty low in the grand scheme of things, when in reality, I mean, this is even without all of my buffs. Usually, look at this, I'm at 4,500 S attack. 50 is not much. So 50 S attack, not really that big of a deal, but you can't really get anything anywhere else, right? The trick here though is, if you notice, there's an S attack bonus too. We're only going to put 3 points here to start with, so it gives us 10 S attack. But S attack bonus 2 for 10 points, so it gives us 75. So we're just going to grab the 75, we got 2 points left over, and then bam. We're pretty much done with our skill tree. So this is mostly what my skill tree is going to look like at level 90 on Bouncer. If you guys want to slow this portion down, or you want to pause it, this is mostly the same that, actually I think this is exactly the same that the dual blade skill tree on the, I want to say the balance. I play another game called Final Fantasy 14 as well. But this is mostly what the skill tree looks like on the PSO2 Fleet Discord on their recommendations. Actually, this is exactly the same. So yeah, this is pretty much exactly the same as what they use. Pretty much works out to being what you can get for damage. And then if you're going all the way up to 95, the other 5 points I'd probably just put here. I can't imagine what else I would do with another 5 points going up to 100. I probably would put another point in step advance maybe. And then after that, maybe look at heal share. I don't know. Maybe more in just reversal gain to get more PP back. Who knows? But it's up to you guys. And craft mastery just gives you stat bonuses on crafted weapons. Crafting weapons is a kind of a different form of upgrade in a sense. They call it crafting in this game, but it's mostly like kind of a modification to weapons. You really don't use that style of weapon for the most part, since the highest rarity weapons you can get, some of the strongest for Bouncer, you don't craft them, so it's really nothing you really look at. So this is in a bunch of different trees. You really don't worry too much about it. But that's really going to cover Bouncer. Let's jump over to the usual, the Hunter sub. So when you're looking at subclasses, first off, you can grab these because they're free. Doesn't matter, right? Whatever. I usually just get them and get them out of my way. Next off, this, if you're looking at skills for subclasses, you want to look at skills that don't have this. Notice it says main class only, meaning this skill doesn't work when it's a subclass, but I take it because it doesn't cost any points, so who cares? And then most of the same things are going to apply here when you're looking at subclasses. This high level bonus is not subclass only, so you want to grab it. That means when you hit level 80, 10% damage buff overall. Really nice, right? Now, we want to go to things that matter. Now, that's not going to follow the same sort of process that the main tree actually followed. If I was on the main tree hunter, I'd be looking at grabbing sword gear, wired lance gear, partisan gear. Those sort of things would be important to me right this very moment, right? Because that is the focus of the weapon, but we're not using these weapons because hunters are subclass, not our main class. Which is something you're also going to notice. You don't usually pick your subclass for the weapon you're using. You pick your main class for the weapon you're using, pick your subclass to support your main class. Now for this situation, I knew if someone asked me about this, they had asked if putting a point into health ends up messing up their tree. Not really, no. It doesn't mess up your tree because if you put a point into health boost 1, you have to. You got to put a total of 5 points to actually get to what you want. Put a point in health boost 2, you kind of did waste a skill point. I mean, it's some extra HP, but didn't really need it. So we're going to jump 5 points into here. And it gets us down to what we actually want. All this stuff, all this is not really important to us. Notice this is not main class specific, so there are certain builds people use where they're using like certain classes as subclass, but they're using a very specific type of weapon that is all class, and they want to get the gear for it or the focus for it. That's kind of one of those situations. The only one I can think of is there was a video of someone doing fighter hunter where they had a very specific weapon and they were using a sword. So, you know, but those are high level things you're really not going to mess too much with. They're very, very specific. So most of the stuff isn't really be of use to us. Of note, I've seen people say this in multiple different ways. The step advanced, you can get more points in a step advanced here as well, but I've seen people say that this stacks. I've seen people say that this doesn't stack. Of merit to note, this at 10 points is 0.2. If this does stack, what I would recommend is taking 2 points in one class and 3 points in the other, because 2 points is 0.9 or 0.09. 3 points is 0.11. If they stack, that's 0.2, which would be the max. So if they do stack, then I would recommend doing that because that would give you your max dash. And it would be less skill points overall. It's 5 versus 10. So, but to keep that in mind, that means it has to be across 2 different classes. That's if it works out that way. Just something to note. I've had people tell me multiple different ways it does work, it doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. But if it turns out that it does work, then hey, something cool to check out. So again, we're going to start with our multipliers. Now, something of note, usually you only grab the main stance of a subclass, usually, when it comes to your subclass picking. So in this case, Hunter's our choice. We're just gonna jump right into it. To be honest, this isn't really too important on how you do this. I personally don't start with grabbing this first as a hunter. What I usually do is actually go into the defensive portion of hunter first, and that's for something called automate half-line. Now, you'll have a love and hate relationship with this skill, but basically what automate half-line does, we're gonna put 3 points here so we can get to it. Automate half-line makes it so whenever your HP drops below 50%, you use a mate item. Now, it uses a mate item, it uses the small one first, then the next largest one, and the next largest one. So it depends on what you have in your inventory. If you have monomates, monomates heal you for 25% of your HP, dimates heal you for 50%, and trimates heal you for your whole HP pool, basically. So in most cases, if you're taking this skill, you just don't carry monomates on you at all. But what happens is you take a point, you have a 20% chance for it to heal you whenever your health drops below 50%. At 10 points, it's 100%, meaning whenever your health drops below 50%, you use a mate item automatically. This is pretty common, and I'd highly recommend it, especially for new players that aren't really used to the timings of attacks and all kinds of stuff. This is going to keep you alive, and you being alive is a lot more important than anything else that you're looking at as far as damage goes. So when I was in the beta for NA, I put 5 points here, went right down, put 3 points here, and then went right in automate half-line. I think that was at like, let's see, so it's 5, so level 5, no, sorry, level 6, then 3 points here, level 9, then 10 points here, level 19. So yeah, before level 20, I had automate half-line, meaning that if I took damage and it was half my HP pool, I would heal right back up. So I could just keep on going and keep on pushing, right? Uptime is going to be your closest thing to keeping your damage up anyway. So if you have to stop to heal or cast a tech, if you had to cast a tech to heal yourself, that's less photon points you can use on dealing damage. So grab automate half-line, fairly useful. Now, I'd say that for most players, there's some actual classes that you don't really want to worry about this, and we'll get into that later. I'm looking at you, Iron Will. But we'll jump down from there. So grab automate half-line, cool. We're going to go into grabbing our stance buffs. So we grab the just attack bonus, or on NA servers it's called perfect attacking, but it just means it increases your damage whenever you're doing a perfect attack. These are just for normal attacks. So to non-technique just attacks. Non-technique just attacks. I'm trying to think. No, okay, yeah. So it's just going to be towards your attacks itself. So it doesn't specifically mention PAs or anything along those lines. So just attacks are going to get your bonuses. Or perfect attacks, excuse me. Fury Stance. Notice that it actually goes for strike power and ranged power. That really means that this isn't only used for, that's why people recommend this as one of the best subclasses to use, because not only is it useful for melee classes, you can actually use it as a ranged as well. It's fairly common. For a while, some people end up going like, say, Gunner Hunter. Granted, I think Gunner Fighter is the meta right now, Gunner Hunter is an option people sometimes use, and Ranger Hunter. So does mean you get some more damage bonuses. So multipliers, very nice. We'll grab that there. This is just a bonus. That means it just stacks on top of the other skill since it's the second one. We're grabbing that, fairly nice. And then is there really a method to how you should grab these? To be perfectly honest, no. Just grab them as you're going along. You're getting extra power. You have what you need from your main class for the most part. Just grab them as you go. Notice how we're leaving critical for the end. So here it's a little bit of a nuance in my opinion. You can start by grabbing this first. This is just your combo. This is exactly what it does. During Fury Stance, which is going to be up all the time because it's your base stance. During Fury Stance, increase your damage for each successive just attack, a 10% maximum bonus. So for a while, some people tend to go with 5%, meaning that on your second hit, because it's the second hit, you'll be at 10% because it's the maximum bonus. You can grab it to 5. That usually is okay, and then eventually you're going to go up to 10 when you have enough skill points. Cool, that's going to be useful for you. And critical, again, is just damage. It stacks with the other crit from your other class, so 25%. And you'll see why this starts to become the meta later on when you get higher levels. So you get 25% here. You're getting an extra 25% here, depending upon if it's a breakable part, if it applies 90% of the time for non-breakable parts, or if you're on the correct elements. So 50% base. And then your critical field gives you another 30%. So look at that. You're already 80% with no help from anything else. Which is why crit tends to become the meta later on, because you get enough skill points to do things like this. But that's after you have gotten everything you really need. Now, I know some people, probably more vets, are like, dude, why are you looking at crit first? You should have shown them the other stuff. There are some other things you should look at as well. One very common thing to take is Massive Hunter. Massive Hunter is a defensive buff that essentially makes it so you don't get knocked back and you take less damage. While that's up, people tend to use that in situations where they feel like they're going to get clipped, where they're doing very high damage rotations that they really can't be bothered to stop and worry about dodging abilities as well. So if you're looking into grabbing Massive Hunter, which at level 90 I would recommend going ahead and getting it, you would put 3 points in a flash guard and then grab Massive Hunter. Now, there's some classes that get abilities that are very similar to Massive Hunter, so they don't need to take Massive Hunter. In those situations, just skip this, don't worry about it. Now, there is something to be mentioned for Warcry. You can get 1 point. What it does is it causes enemies to move towards you instead of the target they're going after. It was really heavily used in earlier portions of the game where you had stuff where you were doing like tower defense. You could Warcry to get things to move towards you first. Or if you have abilities that are going to be pairing abilities, you want monsters to attack you instead of anyone else. I can tell you right now, if you're not main playing or main classing Hunter, usually Hunters are going to have this ability because of not only Warcry but War Brave, and also War Attract, which means whenever they Warcry something, it makes it the target gets gelling on them, which makes them deal less damage and has them come towards the Hunter, and the Hunter has abilities that they parry. So Hunters are usually going to be the ones that pull everything towards them. So if you like something like a pseudo tank in a sense, then you probably want to play Hunter, but I digress. Moving on, we're going to talk about the other option outside of Automate Halfline. Now, some classes take both. I'm just going to say that right now. Some classes take Automate Halfline and Iron Will. Actually, there's only one I can think of, and fighters sometimes do this, because fighters have a mechanic where they drop themselves to 25% of their maximum HP. And they have a bunch of buffs that they get when they're at low HP. And of course, being at low HP, you want to have something that's going to keep you alive. And what Iron Will does is it gives you, at full 10 points, a 75% chance to survive a fatal hit. Which is pretty cool, actually. Now granted, it's still a chance. Not a guarantee. And when you take those 10 points, you can then grab something called Never Give Up. After your Iron Will procs, you get a massive S attack bonus. Now it's only S attack, and this is a flat attack bonus. Keep that in mind, not percentage based. So it's only S attack bonus. You get a massive S attack bonus for 60 seconds after Iron Will procs. Again, it's pretty much just fighters that use this. Unless you're someone who doesn't like dealing with Automate Halfline. For a while on certain quests that went on long enough, where I felt like my Automate Halfline I'd run out of mates. I just went ahead and went with Iron Will Never Give Up. That's why I have a separate tree for it. But it's more common that you're going to use Automate. With Iron Will Never Give Up, you get a massive damage bonus if you drop below, which you can. But if you're not going to be taking a bunch of points in Iron Will, Again, this is one of those situations where I look at something and say, okay, well, how much is 1 point worth? Well, 1 point gives me 30% chance to live if I take fatal damage. How often am I taking fatal damage? Not very. But a 30% chance to live that fatal damage, in my opinion, is worth the point to put into it. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to, it's not important, but in situations where sometimes you get double clipped, some cases where you take damage and it drops you below 50% to, like, say, that hit takes you from, I don't know, we take a situation where you have 100% HP. You take 30% damage, you're down to 70%. Take 30% damage again, you're down to 40%. Your die-mate healed you up 50%, now you're up to 90%. That next hit that hits you super hard and drops you down to like 20% HP. Your die-mate's only gonna heal you up to 70%. Maybe you get hit by that hit again. Well, now that hit's gonna kill you before your automate halfline can heal you, because that hit went and did all the HP you had left. If you got Iron Will in 1 point, there's a 30% chance that you survive the hit, and it gives you just enough time to get away. It's only 1 second. It gives you just enough time to get away to go ahead and heal up. So I personally like to take it. For me, when I played Bouncer Hunter, in situations where I was going to die, it saved me enough times I feel like the point's worth it, but your mileage may vary. Now we get to that awkward moment again where we have everything that we really want or need. Granted, if you want to go ahead and grab Massive Hunter, grab Massive Hunter. But if you don't grab Massive Hunter, then you got 25 points left over. Well, what are we gonna do with 25 points? We can have the argument for Step Advance, that if Step Advance stacks, we took 3 points of Step Advance, right? If that works. I'm not gonna put the points there because I haven't personally done the testing for it, and I've heard arguments on both sides. So, again, mileage may vary. But we're back at that point again where we're looking at S-Attack, so flat attack bonuses, right? Grabbed everything else we needed, look at flat attack bonuses. So, again, this works exactly the same way. We're gonna put 3 points here. Again, 10 points gives us 50, so we'll put 3 here. 10 points gives us 75. Again, we're gonna put 3 here. And then 10 points here gives us 100. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the 100. We're gonna max out this. Take the 75. Have 2 points left. Bam. 5 points here. So now we have a full tree of everything that we want for Bouncer Hunter. Granted, again, there are some nuances, certain things you want to take, certain things you don't want to take, but if there are other things you don't agree with, you saying, oh, hey, look, I should have points here, I should have points there, just pull them from this. This is literally like basically a 25-point pool that you have to play around with to grab other things. So you have some weird build setup where you're like, I'm playing Bouncer Hunter, but I have this really weird weapon that's a hunter, that's a sword or a wired lance that I can use as a bouncer. I want to take points into sword gear. Well, you're pulling those points, you're pulling them from here. You got 25 points to work with, so grab them, pull them, put them somewhere else. That's really about it, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this is beneficial to you guys. I have some other videos I'm going to be working on, 2 other ones I want to do. One's going to be building a mag, which I need to get another mag and find out what I'm going to do with it. So that's probably going to be at the end of the week. And then the other one's probably going to be about making money in PSO2. I know money's kind of important to people when it comes to MMOs. And to be perfectly honest, it's not too difficult to do. I'll talk about why when it comes to PSO2, but yeah, we're gonna jump into that later on. This video is already long enough as it is. I wanted to be more in-depth with this one here because people have asked for more in-depth content when it comes to PSO2. Hopefully this is what you guys are looking for. Anyway, I could babble on forever. I'm gonna try not to. I will catch you guys all in the next one. Later, guys.